emergency meeting of the Cohasset School Committee on Tuesday, May 18th to order. Would all committee members present please indicate so in roll call? Mrs. Colery.
Present.
Mr. Kearney.
Present.
Mrs. Marr.
Present.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Present.
And I am present, Craig McClellan. So at 3:01 p.m., all committee members are present. Thank you all so much for being here on short notice. Thank you to members of the leadership team that are present. Much appreciated, and much appreciated for everyone's efforts today and what has been a very sort of stressful and active day for everyone involved in the school district. So thank you. I called this meeting to order. Given, as everyone is aware, the Department of Elementary Secondary Education on Monday, May 17th had issued relaxed guidance surrounding face coverings within schools. And the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, otherwise known as MIAA, issued relaxed guidance surrounding face coverings during student sporting events today, May 18th, effective today. So I'm calling this emergency meeting to address those issues as they are currently in conflict with our face covering policy as written. So I'd ask before we have any discussion for Dr. Sullivan to simply summarize the relaxed guidance I'm speaking of so everyone's operating on the same plane here. Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair McClellan, and thank you for calling this meeting and for everybody being here. Yes, as you mentioned, May 17th, so yesterday, the governor and then following that, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education came out with guidance which allows for the rescinding of mask wearing outdoors at recess. Just to make sure I have it clear here, is all learning environments, which is recess and any type of youth sports, physical education, and any outdoor learning environments. And that guidance was set because obviously we have a declining rate of COVID spread and we have a higher rate of vaccinations. So it's a very positive step. And one of the stipulations of that particular sort of guidance point is that contact tracing at recess will not be happening. So they will not contact trace at recess. So folks should know that. They will be, to the best of my knowledge, still contact tracing if there are outdoor classroom environments, which typically stay spread out anyway. So that's a stipulation. That was the major thing in terms of that particular piece of guidance. The second guidance came out, as you had mentioned, from the MIAA with DESE today. When the governor came out with his information, it didn't specify interscholastic sports being able to remove masks. He did specify youth sports. Well, as it turns out, today at about 11 o'clock, DESE and the MIAA came out together with a notice that effective today, masks are not required to be worn in athletic practices and in games outdoors. And of course, I have Athletic Director Rotundi here to talk a little bit about that if we have questions for him. But essentially, that's outdoors, and then indoors only in low risk sports. And I don't believe our sports right now fall into that low risk category. So essentially, we would be, if we're following the ordinance, which again is an adjustment to our mask policy, we would be allowing students to take off masks outdoors in all of our athletic contests and practices. I should add that in all of these changes, that students can opt to, and families can opt to have their students wear masks. We're not saying you have to take off your mask. You can certainly wear a mask if you want to. There was some other guidance involving shared supplies and cleaning surfaces, which we'll handle in an operational capacity and be able to talk about at the official school committee meeting tomorrow. But those two items really dip into our mask policy. That is the wearing masks or not wearing masks during an educational opportunity or recess, and then the playing of sports outside, whether it be a practice or a game. So I know it's important for the school committee to have some thoughts on this. It was very important for me to follow a process with this and not to rush it. And we were able to have conversations with our public health officials. We were able to have conversations as a leadership team, send notice to the association. So, and this is our last step. So we're able to do it in a small amount of time. Additionally, there is the matter of prom, which we know we're very excited for this coming Friday, and then graduation, which is the following Friday, and how this new guidance might affect that. Principal Scott is here to take any questions regarding that. But in a nutshell, we are still figuring out some of the guidance and how it will impact us. But the big point on mask wearing is we were given permission today from our public health agents, pending approval by the school committee, to not require masks at our prom and not require masks at our graduation. I know that Principal Scott will follow up at a later time with more details about those two events as they get closer. Of course, prom is very close. And if the committee has any questions for him, that's why he's here. But I wanted to put that out to you. So we do, if it's approved by the committee, anticipate a prom without masks and a graduation without masks. One little caveat to that is that we do have buses that we've employed to be shuttling students at our proms from their picture opportunities to the actual prom on those buses, because it is a bus situation. And this also applies for public transportation, by the way. Students will have to mask on the buses, and that will be a requirement. I know Principal Scott will be reasserting that as we go. And Principal Farrell, of course, is here representing the elementary in case there's any questions about our recess situations. So that in a nutshell is why we're here, Chair McClellan, is to look at, as you said, to look at the mask elements, because the policy does sort of bind us to not allowing these things to happen unless you change it.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. And really the main urgent factor or exigent factor here was the fact that we do have student athletes participating in games this afternoon. Athletic Director Rotundi, I believe that's the case, correct? And I want to make sure that our students are benefiting from any relaxed rules as much as any other town. And so I do understand the sort of the urgency there. But in terms of prom and other operations, I understand that you will all be responding to that appropriately, and we can maybe discuss that more tomorrow if necessary. What I really want to address here is just the conflict between our current policy, our current face covering policy, which is policy EBCFA, and the relaxed guidance issued yesterday and today. So at the outset of our discussions, I just want to note to all the members here and all the audience members that what I'm going to be seeking at the conclusion of our discussion is a motion to suspend our current face covering policy, which is EBCFA, in so much as it conflicts with the relaxed guidance issued by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on Monday, May 17th, and the relaxed guidance issued by the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association issued on Tuesday, May 18th, today, effective today, but not in any other manner. So not by way of an exhaustive list, excuse me, but by way of example only. It would work to suspend the policy in the manner in which outlined by those relaxed guidelines, but not in any other way. So for example, only students would still have to wear masks inside. Even as a result of this vote. So that's the motion I'm going to be seeking after we're all finished discussing the issue. If anyone does have anything to discuss, Mrs. Kaleri, you're up first in alphabetical order.
Is it possible for us to, I'm nervous about how vague that is. And I don't mean that in a critical sense. I just mean, I wonder if it's possible for us to amend our mask policy to say that on transportation and in school facilities, everyone is required to wear a mask, but during outdoor activities, they're not.
I think it's a good point. It's a salient point that was raised by others and throughout the day. And I don't, the issue, Mrs. Caleri, is that I don't want to be rewriting the policy today, and I don't think that we need to. In other words, the new relaxed guidance doesn't state that you're not to wear masks on the bus anymore. That's not part of it. So our mask policy would not be suspended in that manner. That's at least what I envision happening. If you feel, obviously I'm one of 5. If you feel that it's necessary, then, you know, perhaps we have to take a more specific vote. I'm looking to do this as simply as possible at this juncture. And I do think that what I proposed adequately addresses that. But if you
Well,
feel,
I'm just wondering if we can do what you proposed until tomorrow night when we have a meeting that's scheduled where we're deliberating. Maybe we can just say in the interim, outdoor activities can be conducted maskless. Is that possible?
anything's possible, sure.
Okay, I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say. Thank you.
Mr. Kearney. Mr. Kearney, you're going to be on deck. We're moving to Mrs. Marr.
Hi, is my sound on?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So along the lines of what Mrs. Caleri stated, I think simply we could amend paragraph 2 of the policy to say a face covering that covers the nose and mouth must be worn by all individuals in school buildings and on school transportation, even when social distancing is observed. Face covering is not required out of doors. I think that's clear. Unless it's going to conflict with prom or graduation.
I defer to Brian on that a little bit, but I don't believe that what you just said would interfere with anything now that we've been given the permission to have no masks at the graduation and the prom.
I just think that,
Did you write the amended language down, Mrs. Marr?
yep. Yes, I can.
It sounds fine to me. I mean, that's fine. We can just do suspend it in so much as it doesn't conflict and as amended by language proposed by committee member Marr today. And that should square us away, I would say. Thank you for the proposal. Mrs. Caleri, does that sound sufficient to you?
Yep, that sounds great. Thank you, Mrs. Marr.
And Mrs. Marr, I'm happy to add the policy language if you want to forward it to us, or if you, and I'm happy to do it. If you want to just email me the language. I just didn't have a chance to write it down, but
Yep.
I'm
Well,
happy.
I'll just make the motion to that effect, if that's okay. Unless Mrs. St. Ange or Mr. Kearney have any further comment.
My comment is that I agree with both you and Mrs. Caleri, Ms. Marr, and I think that having something specific and explicit on the books is important, and it adds, it makes it easier to conform to. And I think that anything that can be done to be clear in our communication is helpful to keep our community on board and to keep everybody safe. So I like the language that you proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Ange. Mr. Kearney, you there?
Yes.
Do you have
You hear
anything
me?
to add?
No, first, I'd just like to thank everybody for putting this emergency meeting together, because that helps the kids not only today's games, but tomorrow's too. So it's much appreciated. I'm sure the kids will appreciate it. And thank you for all. And I appreciate the comments. I think it's a great idea. And then we can discuss the prom tomorrow night. And I'm looking forward to talk about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kearney. I just want to make sure where we're getting into the actual policy language now, which I was hoping not to do. Let me just make sure, and I'm sure Mrs. Marr adequately read through this, but And I encourage everyone else to look at this too. And if I see there's a Q&A from the member of the community, and I'll take that in a second. Where did you propose that amended language go in, Mrs. Marr?
Second paragraph. I believe it's the only paragraph where it discusses where masks are to be worn. The rest of the policy is the type of masks, what's permitted and not, and exceptions to wearing a mask or a face covering.
Yep, I don't think it causes any other problems. I mean, I'm reading it. Okay. Okay, then we can do that. Let me just take this question from Sean Galvin at 143 Fort Hill Street, Hingham. Will there be any changes to guest restrictions for graduation May 28th? And if it rains, will graduation be rescheduled to Saturday, May 29th? And what time? Alternatively, will graduation be moved to May 29th, the first day restrictions are lifted and unlimited guests have an indoor option, 2 to 4 guest limit if it rains?
So I know I'm going to defer to Principal Scott on this in a minute, but I know we're still working through, remember this guidance just came out Monday. We're still sort of digesting it and working through it. We do know that we are lifting the mask wearing at the graduation. But I don't know if Principal Scott's even had a real chance to talk with his team too much, but don't feel you have to say anything right now, Principal Scott, but if you have any information, feel free to.
It's new, so I think there's a couple of things to consider. One is there's kind of the policy guidance, and the policy of outdoor mask wearing has kind of been rescinded. So that's the piece of the DESI guidance that we're looking to amend. The operational piece of it is a little bit different. So we've contracted with the stage and certain amount of chairs and 143 and have a whole AV set up ready to go for Friday night. If that needs to move, I can't make that decision here. We'd have to wait and see what we get as it gets closer to the actual date and what kind of practical considerations that has and whether or not we need to move it inside or not. So I can't really answer all of that just yet, but we're definitely, I think the option on the table, and we'll discuss it again tomorrow night, is to remove the mask piece. So that's what we're considering today.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate just quickly that I'm cannot be more thrilled we're having an outdoor graduation in as full a way as we can. And we're one of the, not a lot of schools are necessarily able to have a prom. Remember when the initial prom guidance came out, DESI was very much discouraging having a prom and had some real qualifications around it. So I think we're certainly aiming towards a couple of excellent events for our seniors, and thank you to Principal Scott for that and his team. So I know we'll work out the other pieces, but as Principal Scott said, this just rescinds that mask requirement. And it's particularly important to notice that that was an approved thing by our Department of Health.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you, Principal Scott. Are there any further discussion points from the members of the committee? Great. If not, then Mrs. Marr, does your motion stand to revise the policy EBCFA as proposed with your proposed amendment language?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Yes, Dr. Sullivan. Is there a question?
Yeah, one part of the guidance that I neglected to mention is that adults must continue to wear masks outdoors if distancing cannot be maintained. So that's an important thing in those educational activities and in the also in if they're monitoring recess or whatever it may be.
This is why I didn't want to get into specific policy language, but I'm
sorry about that.
That's fine. It's a good reason. I mean, that's why I was trying to think that through. I didn't want to get into specific policy language. I just want to say, in so much as it conflicts with this guidance, because the guidance speaks for itself. But I don't know. Any Mrs. Marr, do you have a suggestion on how to handle that? Just add that in a.
So we could amend the policy paragraph 2 to say a face covering that covers the nose and mouth must be worn by all individuals in school buildings on school transportation. Masks are not required to be worn by students outside on school grounds.
Even if the student is 18 and an adult? Just asking.
Nope, you're right. I mean, um,
Well, I don't know that. I like, again, this is part of the reason that I like to follow process and be able to have those conversations and be able to talk with the people I like to before we make decisions. But I would say that this, from the way I read this, this only applies to students. And the way I currently understand it, even back to Principal Scott, is for graduation, that I don't know that we've been able to rescind the need for families to have to wear masks, just the students. I would really have to look at that in terms of graduation too, as we really look at this. So I don't really know the answer to that 18-year-old thing. I absolutely haven't had the chance to research that.
I would just, again, yes, at this juncture, we just suspend the policy in so much as it conflicts with the recent relaxed guidance. I don't know about getting into the weeds right now. I understand the need for, believe me, for specificity in legislation, but I think that that other guidance speaks for itself. And if we just suspend the policy, then we're able to implement these, excuse me, Dr. Sullivan is able to implement these operational changes without being in conflict with the policy of the school committee. Yes, Mrs. St. Ange.
I'm just wondering if we go in the more simple route that you are suggesting. When communication is sent out to the school community, can we just highlight those specific points in our email? Because I think drawing attention to it is what is important. And perhaps later that will be reflected in policy language, but right now we just want to make sure that's clearly communicated to all members of our community.
I think that's a wonderful approach, suggested approach. And I think Mrs. Mara is correct that eventually we need to amend the policy. I just don't know that I don't know. I want to brainstorm here. I'm just trying to quickly and effectively respond to basically agencies that gave the districts absolutely zero notice whatsoever on these changes. Thank you for that, by the way. And be able to have our student athletes benefit from this change this afternoon in approximately 37 minutes. So would everyone be on board?
Why don't we can we just say that we're like, for the purposes of today, until our school committee meeting, can we just say that no masks are required for students during athletic contests or at recess? We can revisit this at our meeting if we need to.
Yeah, I think you got to be also specific about physical education classes and outdoor learning environments. I would add, Ashley, too.
Sure. So we can just list those things. No masks required for students during. Four
And
things.
remember, it has to be outdoor sports.
Yep.
Guys, just get on board with the suspension of this. We can talk about it tomorrow. We're getting into the weeds too much, and this is just, we need to respond to this. Yes, Mrs. St. Ange.
I just think that if we do, not to say like, oh, go with my suggestion, but if we do what we just discussed with the suggestion, we are doing what Mrs. Colery is saying, but we aren't recreating a policy right now.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm not saying any of these points are invalid. I'm not saying that. I just think that the simplest way to do this without rushing through language in a policy that already didn't anticipate certain circumstances, not because of anything anyone did wrong. It's just that, these things always change. I'd rather not be coming up with specific language right now. I'd rather just suspend it in so much as it conflicts with the relaxed guidance. And then we can, as in our messaging, as Mrs. St. Ange suggests, we can highlight those changes. And Mrs. Colery, let's absolutely discuss it more tomorrow if we want. But right now, the reason it's an emergency meeting is just because there is a little bit of urgency surrounding athletics. And while we're at it, why wouldn't we address the other DESE guidance? So with that said, there's a question from one of our students, Walid Kalani. I apologize so much if I'm mispronouncing your name. I know that he's been active in the quest to have us revise face covering rules. He's asking, are we adopting the MIAA no mask requirement for outdoors? That is what we are determining right now. That's what we're here for, Walid. So thank you very much for your activism on behalf of your students. So with that question taken, is there a motion on the floor to suspend the current face covering policy, EBCFA, in so much as it conflicts with the recent relaxed guidance issued by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, issued on Monday, May 17th and Tuesday, May 18th, respectively, but only in that way, not in any other manner. Is there a motion on the floor to that effect?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. St. Ange. Is there a second? Who was that?
Second,
Seconded by Mr. Kearney.
Paul Kearney.
Seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor? Mrs. Colery.
I'm gonna abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Colery. Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney, was that an aye?
That was an aye. Can you
Thank you.
hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kearney. Mrs. Marr.
I'm gonna vote no, because I just don't think that technically you can make an amendment to you can put a caveat on a policy that doesn't exist in the first place. The caveat isn't there.
Okay, so that's a nay.
That's a no.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Mrs. St. Ange.
Well, what Mrs. Meyer just said made me uncomfortable because I don't want to vote for something that we're not supposed to do. But because we're probably fixing it tomorrow, I'm going to say aye.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Ange. Aye. Craig McClellan. That motion passes by a vote of 3 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 abstention. Dr. Sullivan, we have suspended that policy in so much as it conflicts with those new relaxed guidelines by DESE and MIAA. So I'd ask you to please implement those operational changes that you are now free to do.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And Athletic Director Rotundi, I think you're the first call out to those teams. So thank you very much for the support, and we'll be back at it tomorrow night. And I know Principal Scott will be joining us there as well. I just want to thank Principal Farrell, who didn't have to say anything, but she was here in case questions went that direction. And then, of course, to and Leslie made it, Dr. Scollins. So anyway, thank you, Craig.
Thank you. And members of the school committee, points well taken. We can address this. It was originally going to be, a topic not reasonably anticipated by the chair in 48 hours in advance of the meeting. However, I just believe that there may have been a little urgency based on some parent feedback surrounding athletics. So that's why we had an emergency meeting, because people didn't feel that, it was right to wait another 24 hours until the next meeting, especially because there's games today and there's games tomorrow before the meeting. So we can discuss it more tomorrow. For today, I just wanted to get this done for the kids, the student athletes.
And thank you, Craig. I appreciate it. All right, guys, I'll see you guys all tomorrow.
Hold on, Paul.
Don't we have to, hold on, Paul.
We gotta make, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting at this time?
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh,
Motion made by Mr. Cleary.
Sorry.
it's okay.
Second.
I'll take that as the second, seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in
Yes.
favor, Mrs. Cleary,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Mrs. Kearney, Mr. Kearney, yes, aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. That motion unanimously passes. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much to be available at last minute notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Great day, guys. Bye.